welcome to Your Music, Your Way, the powerful path of sonic improvisation for accessing innate genius and liberating your unique and precious gifts. I'm here today with Maureen McCarthy, a dear friend of mine, an amazing human being who I'm really excited to engage in a conversation with today. Welcome, Maureen.
So happy to be with you. We always have fun.
We do, and we're going to do some more of that today.
Nice.
So we are here on a Monday, a couple of weeks before this summit is going to launch, and so over the course of the last week, the world has been launched into this this virus thing in a big way, and it's fascinating because this summit was conceived in the idea that navigating the unknown is one of the most important and essential skills that we could possibly learn. We are now feeling that. We've known it intellectually for about 100 years, that reality consists of energy and matter bouncing back and forth probabilistically, and that the future is fundamentally unknowable. So we've known it intellectually with our left brains, but now we're really feeling it. Now we're really sinking into that reality that it's just weird, that reality is weird, it doesn't make sense, and there's more going on than we can really make sense of. And the choice that we face in this time is whether to brace ourselves from the unknown or to embrace it. So I think it's really helpful to consider sonic improvisation as a meditation. It may be the meditation of the future that really helps us to learn skills that some of us have developed more than others, that can enable us to navigate unknown territory with a sense of confidence and grace and ease. So this summit is gathering together improvisational musicians and actors and actresses, scientists, ritual leaders and activists, people who have some experience with this process of navigating the unknown. It's been a really fun set of conversations so far, and talking with Maureen today is really going to be super fun. So I want to thank you all for being part of this and listening and checking into this collective exploration together. So Maureen was told when years ago that she would die young of a rare genetic lung disease, and with no cure in sight, she couldn't change her body, so she set out to change her brain. Maureen sees death and illness as an opportunity to question the nature of our brain's relationship to pain and fear. And this propelled her to design a radical brain-based approach to being alive, using the neural circuitry of social connection to harness group stress and build trust in fast-paced environments. Maureen is the co-founder of the Center for Collaborative Awareness and the co-creator with her husband Zell Nelson of the Blueprint of We, a collaborative relationship design document. Maureen has worked with organizations from Dropbox to the World Relief Organization to create vibrant leaders and inspire mindful ways of being human. And she's here with us today to talk about how to wire your brain for amplification. Thanks again, Maureen, for being here. This is going to be super fun.
Good. Where should we begin? I feel
Where
like
shall we begin?
Talk for a month and still not finish the
and we have.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to be able to keep this under 4 or 5 hours or not, but we'll see. Maybe we can keep it within 40 or 45 minutes. We'll give it a go. That will be a first for us, I think. But always an adventure. So I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about this new model that you've come up with. We've talked a lot about the Blueprint of We, and I encourage people to go check that out. It's an incredibly powerful tool for creating and kind of documenting new ways of doing relationships and making agreements with each other in personal life and business life. And I really encourage people to check that out. But I'd really like to hear you talk a little bit about your new model that you're putting out now.
Sure. Well, it's an interesting thing. As you can see, I'm on oxygen, and I actually have a rare genetic fatal lung disease that they literally put me on hospice like 15 years ago and I'm still not dead. But I only have 10% lung capacity left. Most people, it's only in women, so there's only about 2,000 women in the world who have it. And most people are dead within 10 years. The onset is, they say, like puberty, because it's hormonally driven. And then you're dead in 10 years. Well, I've lived 30. And it's been a really interesting journey. The work that I do in the world through the Center for Collaborative Awareness, which is around how to bring groups together and have really healthy, thriving interactions and relationships. I spent so many years in business watching really brilliant, self-aware people come together to do things, and I couldn't figure out why it would sometimes fall apart. Like, you'd think all the elements were there. And it really has been the journey of my lung disease that sort of made me look at things in a very different way in terms of how relational everything is. Like, I literally have a relationship with my health, with my body, with my mind, with other people, with the planet, with the land I live on. We are so relational. And how those relationships, how healthy or unhealthy those relationships are in my life, changes my body dramatically. So I've been on oxygen for a third of my life now. And I have an experience of, like, if I do stress like I used to, I literally can't breathe. I can't lift my hands over my head. I can't get dressed. I can't shower. Like, life kind of comes to a standstill if I'm stressed out. So I often say I'm like the princess in the pea. I feel stress earlier than a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
But what that led me to understand is how often am I looking at the world, creating a picture of what it is, finding things that are problems and needing to fix them, stressing out about this, anxiety about that, like showing up in that space of fear and worry, which when you have a lung disease, my kids were really little. Like, what they told me, the year they told me I would die, I think they were going to be 2 and 4 or 3 and 5. So the world gives you all kinds of stories about death and health and fear and all these things. And I just kind of woke up one day and was like, I don't think I want to buy those stories. And the model that you're talking about came out of, I went through a particularly rough year in my health where I realized, like, in the medical system, everything, I was seeing all these doctors and doing all kinds of appointments and stuff. And I was in this process of feeling like my body was a problem and I needed to fix it. I needed to solve this problem. And we have a really interesting relationship in our brain to the idea of having a problem and solving it, because when we solve it, we get this little dopamine hit that says, ooh, I've solved the problem. That feels so good. Let me find another problem. But it means we're pretty much looking on the landscape for problems night and day. And it was in that space that I kind of pulled back and realized the entire architecture of our human civilization has been built on this problem solution thinking. And if you think of like problem solution thinking as the wall, we keep going up this ladder. There's a problem. Figure out whose fault it is and what we need to do and how we're going to fix it. And we move up the ladder. Problem solution, problem solution. But what was happening when I did problem solution, is I could not handle the physical pain in my body. I had to distance myself from the people I cared about most. I wasn't in an improv state because I was so tightly managing everything to be able to handle pain, to breathe better. But there's an interesting thing that happens, whether it's social or physical pain in our body, when that neural circuitry lights up, is that the first thing our brain does when we're in any sort of pain is we distance ourselves, which makes sense. We disconnect. Because if I put my hand on the hot stove or I see a bear in the forest, like, first step is not like embracing the bear and remembering how much I like bears and how I want to help them when they're hungry. I want to pull my hand back. I want to run from the bear, right? So we disconnect. And in that space of the pain I was in and the focus on the problem in my body, I was literally disconnecting from everything that mattered in my life. My husband, my kids, my work, my family, like everything, because I couldn't handle the pain and be in that space. But I thought that was really curious. Like, those are the people and the experiences I needed most to be better.
Yeah.
But because our civilization is built on this problem solution architecture, I mean, think about it. It's like politics and being a lawyer and being in medicine and being a corporate, like all these things are looking at problems all the time. We're always in that space. So
And we reward people who are good at that, who are good at solving problems. It's like that's like number one.
It is the gold standard, Daniel. It is the gold standard. And it makes sense because we get the dopamine hit. But there's a neuroscientist friend of mine, Stephanie Shorter, who said, I don't think the dopamine hit we get that everybody says is the reward system. She said, I don't think it's a reward system. I think it's a certainty system. Our brains crave certainty. And that dopamine hit is like, oh, you can be certain for another moment. And certainty is everything if we're in problem solution mode.
Mm-hmm.
So I began to look at like, okay, how do I start extricating myself from problem solution architecture if it's everywhere I am? And I've gone on a journey to do that. And now I've been doing it in organizations around the world, from couples and families to corporations and startups, because it's a conversation that really flips things on its head. And it's the notion that, like, if I wake up every day, I wake up as the creator of my life. You do, everybody out there. We all wake up as the creator of our lives each day. And what our system generally teaches us to do, our culture, our society, is scan the landscape for problems and then figure out how we're going to, even from like, what am I going to have for breakfast and how am I going to get to work in the right roads and how am I going to get my kid to do their homework? Whatever it is, we're constantly doing that, right? So I realized if I woke up every day and instead of scanning the landscape for problems, instead I scan the landscape for what I desire. Those are two totally different neural networks. Because when we're in a problem, like we're fixating on a problem, I love this recent neuro research. They actually now show that there are entire neural networks that get turned off in our brain. So we don't have compassion and we have less creativity and we're not as creative. And one of the biggest neural networks that gets shut down is our social network, where we connect with other people.
Mm.
And that's fascinating to me. So I didn't want to be in problem mode. I wanted to step out of it. So when I scan the landscape for what I desire instead of what the problems are, I then can use my co-creative energy, and it's co-creative because my social neural network is on, to either design or invent what it is I desire. And that's a different, my whole brain is available to me, not a portion, because problems are tunnel vision. It says shut everything else out and focus on the problem. So now I have all of me available. And I have this experience of feeling like, so when something triggers me, say someone said something or I see something on TV, whatever it is, it triggers me. It's literally like a flashlight into my mind that tells me that, like, I basically have a file in this filing system of my mind that I have to pull in order to make that meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, our brains are meaning making machines. That's what they do. So they store away all these stories and data and feelings and things from over the course of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it operates kind of like a metaphorical filing system of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone triggers me, there has to be a file in there that says, make anger out of that, make
Mm-hmm.
sadness out of that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Problem solution model tells us to take action from there. Ooh, you feel mad? This is what it is. Go take action.
Mm-hmm.
But what I feel like design or invention thinking does, so not problem solution, but desire invention, when I do that, I actually operate from what I call file 2. So file 1 is, this makes me mad.
Reaction.
Yeah, exactly. So I believe you can't have file 1, meaning you made me mad, without it being connected to what I call file 2. And file 2 is what matters to me. It's what I care about. It's my values. Because I will never be triggered by someone unless I believe they have somehow not honored what I value, ever. So with desire invention thinking, I can use file 1 as a flashlight. Oh, there's me thinking that judgmental thought. But when I go and look for file 2, which is like, wait a minute, in this situation, what matters to me? What do I value? What do I care about? And then take action from there.
Mm.
Like,
Mm.
and that, to me, when I'm in that space of desire invention thinking, my body, I'm literally capable of sitting here with you with that much pain in my body and 10% lung capacity. I have an amazing life. I'm connected to people. I'm back into my work and my friendships and my community. Like I'm alive again
Mm.
because I changed the way my brain orients itself to the world. And that's fascinating that because nothing's changed in my body. In fact, I've gotten progressively worse, but I'm way healthier and happier and more joyful. Like joy is my autopilot now. I didn't think that was possible.
Well, that's so. It's just fascinating. It never ceases to amaze me, Maureen. These things you describe, because when you have told me how much pain you actually experience a lot in your life, and it's just it's mind blowing to me because it just doesn't match the experience that I have of you.
Right.
Like that can't be right. You can't be experiencing all that pain. And
I don't
I
have
think it might be.
a pain tolerance.
What's that?
I don't have a high pain tolerance. It's not like I can handle more pain than other people. What I have shut down, like I can tell you, sitting here right now, I'm probably an 8 out of 10 in physical pain. But I don't have the story that it's shouldn't be happening and it's going to last forever. And when I shut that part of the pain down, I can show up in a much different way.
And I sort of imagine it as a leaning forward. There's this life that's ahead, and
Yeah.
that's what you're focusing on. You're focusing on possibilities and things that are fascinating and ideas and ways of connecting with people that could be fun and liberating. And
Right.
that's what your mind is focusing on.
Well,
Is
I had
that
to build that muscle over time.
you had to what that muscle?
I had to build that muscle over time. Like I had to start taking the files in the filing system of my mind and rewiring them and upgrading them so that I like to call it the difference between my safety brain and my connected brain. Because as humans, like human brain has evolved that we either need to protect ourselves or connect in order to survive and to thrive. And so I can run the neurocircuitry of safety and protection. I can run my safety brain, or I can run my connected brain, and the more I run my connected brain, the more I create new files and upgrade old files about how I make meaning of the world. And little by little, I got better and better at it. And it's not that I don't have totally stressful days and crazy thoughts and angst about things. Like those things happen, but they're so much more short-lived. They're not long stretches. They don't pull me down to the point where I can't breathe.
And you can recognize it when it's happening and start that process of reorienting yourself.
Yeah. Even if
Uh-huh.
I notice and say, wow, there's me being, crazy again. Even that is different. Like to me, that's the difference between being in the eye of the storm and watching a storm 2 miles off the coast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a different experience.
That's just it's so wonderful, and you're such an incredible example about that. Do you um, I was going to ask kind of a silly question. I think I'll see if I can come up with a better one. I was going to ask if you consider yourself a creative person, but I think that the question is really kind of different than that. Well, I'll put it that way. Have you always thought of yourself as a creative person?
I have pioneer energy. So yes, creation energy is always in me. I need to be creating something every day for me to feel alive. So even if it's like a nice card for someone or how to wrap a package, like it can be anything, but usually it's some collaboration idea or a new tool or a new, like there's all kinds of things, but I'm always in that mode. But that was the thing, is I got less well, that part of my brain turned off, Daniel. I had no access to my creative self.
Hmm.
I didn't have the ability to show up and be that because I was so in problem solution mode. All those files started being, it's like the little tendrils got disconnected. Um, and I felt like I wasn't me because I didn't have my pioneer energy. So shifting over really changed that.
Well, it's hard for us, even even if someone's sitting here listening to this conversation and they can sit there and go, we can recognize this in ourselves. And we can imagine that, yeah, maybe it's possible to do this, but how do I stop seeing things as a problem? I mean, we had a conversation. I had a conversation with you 2 or 3 weeks ago now, and you were talking about, the whole languaging about not using the language of problems and challenges and like not saying that. And I've noticed several times since then, describing something to someone, even talking about our conversation, and mentioning that word problem or challenge. I've sort of a couple of years ago, I sort of went from problems to challenges, as if that's, better.
I do think challenges is better because being challenged by something, I could go back for a PhD and be challenged, but it's how my brain is relating to it. Like I
Mhm.
could, if I say the word challenge, but I'm relating to it as the creation energy of like, what does this make possible? Versus like, oh, this is so challenging. I don't know if I can do it. There's a tightness to it, and a shutting down, and a tunnel vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's the energy that's in there. It's like, oh, so am I afraid of this thing, or am I excited and curious about this thing?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's an interesting one because I often think about, so the language I like to use is what does this make possible? When there's something going on that's challenging, when there's chaos and uncertainty and the pace is moving faster, I I don't want to be in the space of the gripping fear that shuts me down, that disconnects me, I distance from other people, like all the things our brain wants to do. I really want to stop and say, wow, what does this make possible? And I've found that I have two sort of flavors of doing that in the moment of like something traditionally people would think of as not good. I either think what does this make possible with curiosity, or there's a kind of a exclamation. There's kind of an exuberance of like, ooh, I'm really into this. Like this is exciting. I
Mm.
may not be fully curious to go into it, but it's just like it just turns something on. And I might
Huh.
go do something else, but the what someone calls a problem for me now, it's like bring it on. Because if I call something a problem, I get to look into my brain as soon as I feel it's a problem. I get to see which file it is in my mind. I have a chance to shift it. And I've created tools and a process to do that over the years that we do with people. Um, but I want to know, like, I want to know what's triggering me, but I also want to see what it inspires me to do. Like, what does that problem like totally make possible that wouldn't have been possible without it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a different energy than I used to. This was not, I've been a creative person all my life, but I've not been like living from this perspective. Like, this was not me before.
That reminds me of a few years ago, somebody said something along the lines of, I look forward to the dark nights of the soul because, our wise people sort of look forward to those dark times because of kind of what you just said. And I don't know that I'm completely there, but it's but it's true. If I realize and just remember, it's just, I don't even have to realize. It's like we all know all the so many times in our lives when some heartbreak or some
Right.
tragedy sort of ended up turning into like this possibility that could have never happened otherwise. And we've seen it in our lives over and over and over again. And so it could be kind of fun actually to just let go of the resistance and go, oh, how cool, another challenge that I get to learn about myself more, and another fucking growth opportunity. But it
Right.
doesn't even, it can be, I mean, why not? So,
And it doesn't mean you don't take that moment in the beginning to be like, oh, this is awful. Like, it's not about, this is not a
whee!
thing layered on top of all the crap. Like, this is literally like, feel that what you're feeling, because what that is a messaging system. When I get upset about something, when it is the dark night of the soul, it's not a warning system, it's a messaging system. And I want to take in the messages. So feel what you feel. And I think I might have told you this before, Dan. I do stress on a timer on my phone in 15-minute increments. We ever talked about that?
Oh, I haven't heard that.
I'll get upset about something and I'll put on the timer and I can be all out upset as I want to be. And when the timer goes off, I could be mad in 15-minute increments for the rest of my life if I mindfully choose to be. But every time the 15 minutes is up, I have to decide whether I want to re-engage it or not. And 9 times out of 10, I'm just bored. When I stop that trance of being upset, I suddenly realize like, oh, that's just like a pattern. and I'm kind of bored and I'd rather do something else.
Done it before, don't need to do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. I love that. That's powerful. Because then it's also this reminder that we get to choose. We get to choose
yeah,
the next thing.
exactly. Did I ever tell you about when my car got hit in the CVS parking lot?
I don't remember.
So this is a perfect example of this. And this is a perfect example of how I use desire invention too. So I'm in my car, not moving. I've not gone out of park yet. And a woman hits my car and then gets out of hers and comes around to me and says, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's all my fault. I work here at the CVS, but I'm really late getting my kids. Could you just come back tomorrow and we'll exchange insurance information?" I said, "Sure." I left. I went home. The next night, my husband and I are on our way into town to go on our date night. And I'm like happy as a clam and I'm all excited. I said, "Oh, can we just stop at the pharmacy for a minute and let me get that woman's insurance information?" And he said, "Sure." So we stop. And in the meantime, the woman's husband has convinced her that she no longer has to give me her insurance information. Like, I'm out of luck. And I spent a good 15 minutes trying to convince her that that wasn't fair and she knew it was her fault. And why can't you? And I just tried and tried to try and get her to give me the information. She wouldn't do it. And I said, "Well, I'm going to go talk to the manager and see if I can see the camera in the parking lot." And he sits me down in the back and pulls up the video. I was like, "Oh, that's really weird. Yesterday's video is gone. I don't know why." So they had deleted it. So I left, like not knowing what else to do. And I got in the car and I said to Zell, "Zell, I'm going to be mad for 15 damn minutes." And he goes, "Okay." And he puts the timer on. And I found the steering wheel and I said how unfair it was and how I didn't want to have to fix the car and our insurance and blah, 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 blah. And then the timer went off and he's like, "You want more?" And I said, "I want to go on a date night. And this woman is in my car far more than my husband. So let's just go on our date night. Like, this is not where I want to be." So we did. We ended up having a great time. On the car ride home, I said, if file one set me off with all I could get 1,000 people to agree with me that what she did was wrong. That would be easy. That's file one. That was pointing to all those meaning making files about someone hitting your car, right?
Mhm.
That was the flashlight into those files. So that's file one. I said, but if I look at what file two is that made meaning out of that, my file two was, I care about my community. I care about connection. My work is about collaboration. Like, I want to go into my pharmacy and happen to run into her and be able to smile and say hello and how are your kids? Like, I don't want to live someplace where I either want to avoid that store or I don't want to see her at the grocery or whatever. That's not who I am. That's not what I care about. And so I went home that night and I wrote her a letter and I said, "Don't worry about the car. I'll get it fixed. I just want you to know that I realize you were probably between a rock and a hard place between me and your husband. And I understand that's not an easy place to be. And what matters to me more is connection and community. I hope I do see you again and we can say hello and it feels really good because that's important to me. And I appreciate, the work you do at the pharmacy." And the next day I went to pharmacy, I dropped it off. For whatever reason, I've never seen her again. I
Hmm.
actually looked for her car in the parking lot. Like, there's a part of me that like really wants to run into her again for joyful reasons, not anger, right? But I haven't. I don't know what happened. I don't. Maybe she doesn't work there anymore. I'm not sure. But that was a perfect example of how stress on a timer gave me a great night instead of an angry one. And I moved from, this was a problem that I got hit. These are all the solutions you're supposed to take when someone does this, to what is it that I desire? What do I want to create? What do I want to invent? My invention was the letter to her. It was saying community is more important to me.
Mhm.
Now, I think it's possible that I could have gotten to a very calm place and still decided to call the police or call, like in this state, if you leave the scene, the police can't do anything anymore. I could have tried to do more. I'm not saying that's the wrong path by any stretch of imagination if someone wanted to do that. I just know in the moment that was what I was connected to. And if it was the other way, then I want to do that mindfully too. I want to do that with love, even if I'm
Mhm.
trying to get her insurance information.
Yeah, I get that, and that what you really want to do is you want to connect with file two. You want to, what's really important to me. What is it that I want to bring into the world? I'm put upon. I could easily go out and self-righteously do any number of things, and have, like you say, have lots of support, and et cetera, et cetera. But who am I? who am I, and what do I value, and how can I bring what I value
Yes.
to bear?
Make it
And so you connected to your value, and then you brought what you want to bring to the world.
right.
Uh,
Exactly.
and that's a creative process that we can all do. You don't have to have piano skill to 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 make sounds on a piano that would be appealing to you,
Right.
and you don't have to have necessarily great interpersonal skills to be able to connect with what you value and then find some way to express it.
Yes, exactly. That's well put.
Mm, mm. So I'd love to hear you talk. You said that you had taken the year of classes at Second City, and I'd love to hear you talk about your what you learned from that.
Yeah, doing the improv school for a year was, well, I was drawn to it in the first place to do Second City when I was living in Chicago because the two main, principles of the entire thing, as you know, are yes and. So never get up on the stage, and if someone says there's a hole in his arm, you're like, no, it's a cut. Like, no, don't embrace it all and say and add more to the hole. So that was incredibly attractive to me because I want to, when I'm in desire invention, I live yes and. I can embrace people where they are. Like sometimes I got to do some work on it first, but I'm more effortlessly pulling files out from my connected brain and making meaning that does feel like yes and I have like you described it before, of like you can either shut down or like open and there's suddenly all this ability, a possibility. That's where the possibility comes from. Like when I'm in that space where I'm not feeling so tight with judgment of myself, of other people, of the world, then I can say yes and then the other improv experience or the principle is really this idea that if you um oh wait, now I just forgot it, left my
Well,
mind.
about making other people look good. That's what you.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
I like the that was the most fun. That when you're in improv, it is never your job to look good or be funny or be anything. It's everybody else on the stage job to make you look good, and your job is to make everyone else look good. Now, if I'm in my safety brain and I'm shut down or I'm afraid or I'm judging other people, I literally have less of my brain available to either give that more on the stage to others or receive what they're giving me, which is so powerful as well. And
Mm,
I love to be able to be in the connected brain space as often as I can. I do safety brain regularly, I do it, but I want to be more, I want to have more autopilot patterns where I'm in connected brain, where I can be giving that space to other people, where I can help them to shine and I can take when the spotlight's on me and feel
mhm.
good about it instead of like deflecting it.
Yeah, yeah. And there's having done a fair amount of improv theater myself through playback theater.
Right.
That's so true. So much of the experience early on for me when I was getting started with that, it's just terrifying. You're supposed to get up and you're supposed to say something, and you want to say something that's funny or kind of perfect for whatever situation. You're like, oh shit, what if I don't come up with the right thing? And so there's always this like, oh my God, I'm going to be exposed as a fraud in 7 seconds.
Which is problem solution thinking. It's going to be a problem if I fail up here. It's going to be a problem if no one laughs. Yeah,
Yep.
you're
Yep.
so right. Yeah,
And what you're saying is that when we can really, what I'm hearing is that when we really allow for the fact that we're in this together, and that if I maybe to the extent that maybe love just means helping you to look good. And so
yeah,
I can be thinking about how can I make this person over here, like whatever they say, I can say something that will make that the perfect thing to have been said.
yes. Yeah,
And
I
then
love
I'm focused on that. How do I make that have been, oh yes,
right.
yes, and then
Yeah.
somebody else goes, yes, and then just kind of starts flying around, and it's much more than any of us could have created on our own.
What was your journey of melding together your whole life of sound and improv? Like, how did you go on that journey to even intertwine them to the level you have?
Well, I mean, I have always been fascinated with trying to pull things together, make sense of, there's there's this religion here and there's this one over here, and if there's one God, then there's probably wisdom, that's coming through these different perspectives. And one of the things that's funny, I wouldn't have thought of this to say until you asked that question, but you remember the Joseph Campbell interviews that Bill Moyers did years ago? And in the very last one of those interviews, Moyers, when Joseph Campbell had spent weeks talking about how all these different perspectives sort of have the same message that's coming through
Right.
them. And Moyers said, so should we be about, learning about all these different things so that we can sort of appreciate this diverse voice of God? And he said, no. He said, the thing to do is to take your own tradition and to go deeper into it.
Hmm.
And I haven't necessarily done that with Christianity. I still am interested in other perspectives religiously, but there are all these different perspectives. There's the musician's perspective, and there's the scientist's perspective, and there's the improvisational actor's perspective. And at some level, I'm always looking at what they have in common and how they're all contributing something of essence. And just in my own experience, I just came back to the piano after years of being kind of away from it, in grief, and just started realizing that I learn more about myself when I'm sitting here, playing something. There's aspects of me that show up in this relationship that I wouldn't have thought of if I'd just been thinking. you know.
Right.
And so it's just this amazing mirror of my emotional world and my spiritual world that can come out through the sound of the piano, that is, or a drum, or vocalizing, that
Right.
is pretty deep and amazing, and actually very subtle and pretty sophisticated, actually, and accessible. So I just find all those different combinations pretty exciting.
Yeah. And do you think when someone's first even coming to the table of using sound in an improvisational way, do you ever experience people who can be more like gripped and shut down trying to do it, or I know it helps open you for sure, but like from the beginning, if you feel more gripped, like what's the best way if you're coming to it more like with the tension to really to take the first step?
It's a great question. And there's two things I'll say about that. One is that I find that in general, the people who feel that way, who get kind of shut down, are the people who have the most experience on the piano.
That's interesting.
It's the, oh, I should be able to do this better, or oh, I used to be able to play, but I don't know how to now. And so there's all these judgments that got built in,
Files in their mind
all
making
those
meaning.
files.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. And the antidote to that is to play something super simple. In fact, for me, if I'm in my own head and I'm sitting down at the piano, I'm like, I don't want to do this, but I probably should. And if I'm in that kind of mode, the thing that helps me the most is to just play one note and just listen to it.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then if I can slow down enough and really just let the sound in, then another note will come, and just let it soak in and let me be the beneficiary of this beautiful tool. This is an amazing tool. Just to, how horrible could it be to spend 10 minutes just doing, and then there's all these other possibilities that don't really have to be all played. It's just like, what is my system wanting to hear right now? What's the energy that would be healing for wherever I am in any particular moment?
File two related.
Yeah, file two related. What would I like to hear right now? What would my system like to hear right now?
Oh, that's really interesting. I find that when you played the one note, it felt similar to if you were to close your eyes and listen, like when you go less senses open, you hear or you see like the one you're focused on, they're so much richer. You get
Yeah.
so much more. And the one
Yeah.
note, I heard that note really differently because it was just one note.
Yeah. I'll tell you this story real quick, because I love this. A guy named Kenny Werner wrote a book called Effortless Mastery, and along about the time we met, probably about 18 or so years ago, and I was sort of coming back to music. I was coming back to the piano, and somebody said, "So have you heard of this book called Effortless Mastery?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, but that's the best book title I've ever heard, so I got to go get the book." And it's just brilliant. It's really brilliant. And in it, he tells a story about, and he teaches at Berkeley, and he tells a story about an old master jazz piano teacher who was kind of legendary. And he had a new student once that had been widely sought, was probably a kind of a national championship high school piano guy, and he goes to Berkeley, and he's going to take this class from this fella, and they get in there, and the guy says, "Okay, play me an A flat." So he goes, "Play it again, play it again," and this goes on, "Play it again," and it goes on and on and on, and 15 minutes,
Wow.
30 minutes, 45 minutes. And they get to the end of the session, play an A flat. I don't know how he played it, but he's probably wigging out.
Right.
And so they get to the end of the session. He goes, "Okay, well, we'll see you next week." And so he goes, and of course, I don't know, talks to friends, and I don't know, what the hell was that? I thought this guy was supposed to be this, amazing master teacher. And so they get back the next week, and he sits down and he goes, "Okay, play me an A flat." And I don't remember the details right now, whether like they went through the whole second session like that,
Mm.
or just kind of at what point along the way. But at one point, finally, he goes, and just let it go and let it go and let it go, and really listened to the note until it was completely gone. And then the old teacher says, "Okay, now we're ready to begin."
That's so brilliant.
Isn't that great? Um,
Hmm.
and listening is something that we don't have patience for sometimes, and I certainly don't sometimes. And the just paying attention to what is, and noticing, and like stopping for a moment when we walk outside and listening to the bird song for a few moments, and saying thank you for them, sharing their voices with us, and really plugging in. And I heard someone say earlier today about this being one of the potential blessings of this situation that we're in with the virus, is like having to be home and slowing down, and not sort of being in this constant feeding of our addictions of stimulation and activity, and just running from here to there. And like, this is an opportunity for us to slow down and breathe, and listen to the things that are going on around us, and it's being
Yeah.
present.
And that really is sonic improvisation, that listening.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So there may be a real deep blessing in all of this somehow.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Was sound,
So
oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, no. Go
Was
ahead.
sound something you knew as a really little kid was like a thing for you? Like a sense that was more lit up?
That's a really good question. I started to say no, and then I started remembering that, we listen to music a lot in my household. And my brother was a drummer, my sister played the piano, but they were both quite a bit older than me. But so most of the music that I heard in my house was just records that we had. And I just remembered, I listened to there was an opera that was put out in 1956, and it was called Amal and the Night Visitors,
Mhm.
and it was an opera that was written for television, and usually aired around Christmas time. It's this magical story, and exquisite. It's opera. I mean, I don't listen to opera much, but this particular production, it was pretty popular, and performed in a lot of churches for years, and still is in some places. And that music completely transported me. I would sit there and listen to that music and that story, and I just put myself in that place, and the whole, it was a story about something that happened around time of Jesus's birth, and it just completely entranced me.
Well,
Uh, and I have had lots of really magical experiences in my life with music, just letting it completely just amaze me. And so, yeah, I guess it has. I guess it has. And it's also true that I think sometimes I can now just sit down and just completely be transported by playing some simple things on the piano, and just it completely change. Like in 5 minutes, I can be in a completely different emotional space.
I mean, which means you have a whole filing system of sound making meaning of the world for you. And you can put sound as a meaning making file just as much as words or symbols or anything. Like that's what our brain does. And you filled yours with beautiful sounds. And that changes how you feel in the moment.
Well, I don't know. That's an interesting question, actually. I suppose that's true, but one of the things that I think is that I think about this stuff, I don't know if it's true or not, but I think it's like a physical experience that I think is shared. I don't think it necessarily means that my file has to be open to music so much as now, if I start playing something that starts to, like that starts to sound, I could say, well, that sounds like a movie, at the beginning of a movie, and we're gonna,
Right, right.
in the 1300s or whatever. Um, so yeah, I guess we do. The sounds trigger files, don't they? And start triggering associations.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's interesting research, a couple of great books on music in the brain. And they've done research where they play the same piece of music in multiple parts of the planet. And not every piece of music is like totally joyful. It's maybe joyful to 70% of the planet, but 30% don't experience it that way at all. So, like,
Mm,
what are the other meaning making things we put around the sound?
yeah.
And I find that fascinating because sound and music is massively impactful on every human. There's no culture that exists without it. But we make meaning of what the sounds are and what feels good, and yet, we also know there are certain chord progressions and things that like everybody gets a little more excited.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Fascinated by our brain on music. In fact, one of the things I did when my kids were little, so my son Kerrigan's now 25, but when my kids were little, I played music in their room every night to go to sleep, and it was every genre you can imagine. And then I had these series of tapes. I had a little tape player and all these tapes. And I would, if we traveled, I'd take the tapes with me, and they'd still go to sleep with the same whole idea of music. And one of the things that I had learned is that the wider you have your musical experience as a child, the
Hmm.
more you will be open to new music later on in your life. And so Kerrigan, Kerrigan is a Kerrigan. So we call Kerrigan the music mystic. He is way beyond his years, a deeper level of meaningful conversation than most anyone I've met on the planet. He's just an incredibly sweet soul.
I can
And,
attest to that. Yes.
and through high school, so because of moving, He went to 3 different high schools. But I'm telling you, every single high school he was in, every single day of his high school years, he had earpods in his ears, listening to music, usually one. Every school was, you're not allowed to have your phones during school. Every other kid in class over those years got their phone confiscated. He had a thing hanging down. The teacher had to know, but there was something, so it actually helped him to pay attention more, to study better, to capture things in the moment and remember them later.
Hmm.
And he never had a conversation with any of his teachers, but no one ever made him take it out of his ear, ever, which I find fascinating. But he knew really early on that music changed how he paid attention to the world.
Uh,
It's fascinating to
yeah.
see him like create music now based on that.
One of the things that I believe, and I don't know if I've shared this with you, but one of the things that I believe is that uh, sound is the thing that creates everything. Um, do,
So,
do, do you know about there's a field now called cymatics, which is
mhm.
the study of sound and the way it organizes matter. And so you may have seen these plates where they have sand and they'll send a tone to it and it forms these mandalas on the top of the
That's
membrane. It's fascinating. It's super fascinating. And I interviewed a guy, John Stewart Reed, for this summit, which I encourage you to check it out. He's one of the leaders in this field, and he has
cool.
some really interesting stories to tell. But when you think about it, not only do all of the mystical traditions and religious traditions of humanity, their creation stories involve sound, and God said, and in the beginning was the Word,
Wow.
the beginning was Brahman, with whom was the Word, and in the center of the universe she sang. It's always sound making. And what does science call the beginning of the universe?
The Big Bang.
Big bang, right? So it's like
That's
it may
cool.
well be that sound is the most primordial power that exists, and and that it literally, when sound goes out, it
Yeah.
starts organizing things.
Wow. Oh, Daniel, that's amazing to think about. Ooh, that feels so true, doesn't it? Huh. I mean, if it wasn't sound, I'm trying to think of what else it would even be. Like, it feels like it's sound.
Sound.
Hmm.
Um, and so one of the things that I think is fascinating about this process, um, in terms of sonic improvisation, improvisation, this creative urge is one thing, but when you marry that with sound, then you engage one of the most primordial forces in the universe to collaborate with you.
Ah. Okay, so when we talked at the beginning about everything being relational, it's like, what is my relationship to sound? Because we are co-creating, and I can have a good relationship with that, or I can have a cacophonous relationship with that. That's interesting. It is a co-creation process, isn't it?
hmm And when you speak, you're taking your ideas and your creative forwardness that you engage with, and you make it real. You literally realize your thoughts, and you make them a whole lot louder than they were when they were just in your head. And you begin the process. If somebody's there, then it goes into our heads and it starts changing. It starts literally reorganizing the way we think,
Yeah,
because you put it out there in sound.
yeah. Huh. Oh, I'm gonna have some good dreams on that one tonight. Interesting.
And a quick example of that, and I know we're kind of running long, but a quick example of that is, a few years ago I was driving. I had a long drive, and I was kind of upset. I was depressed about something, and and I was thinking of these things that we're talking about, and I thought, I could probably feel better if I just make some sound that is happier sound, and I know I could play some rhythms that would be, you know you know, I could probably pull myself out of this.
Yeah.
And I had this little battle with myself there for a few moments. You know, it's like, yeah, you probably could, you know, but fuck that, you know,
Sure.
whatever.
Right.
And then I thought, well, you know, would you rather feel like this or would you rather feel better? And it's like, well, probably rather feel better. And so I started playing this little rhythm, you know, on the steering wheel, and I started vocalizing, you know, and I wasn't feeling it, but you know, I knew that that would be happier. And you know, it was like, and then at one point it kind of got to be like, oh, this is so stupid, you know, but you know, I started at least enjoying the fact that I was trying it,
Yeah.
and then at least kind of enjoying the fact that, you know, I sounded so stupid. I kind of started laughing at that. And then, you know, within a minute, it wasn't 60 seconds that I was genuinely feeling better.
Which is you opening up your tunnel vision from what you thought was going on to see
Yeah,
other possibilities.
yeah, seeing other possibilities and marrying that with sound. So I
Yes.
was literally hearing things that it was a happy beat. I was hearing things from my voice that was a happy little tune. So it was my hearing senses and my physical senses were hearing things that were happy.
Huh.
And it came from a desire to be happier,
Right.
and I was hearing it, and so then it was like I was marrying back to, you know, it's like Steve Martin, that Steve Martin deal where he's like playing the banjo, you know, and he says you just
Yeah.
can't be depressed when you're playing the, oh, death and grief and sorrow and murder, you know, it's like, right?
That's so true. I have one of the my mom had all the albums for the musicals when I was a kid, so that's the music I grew up on was musicals. And the song I still to this day sing a good 5 or 10 times a week is I Could Have Danced All Night from My Fair Lady, because it does something to calm me. So like if I go up the stairs and I can't breathe when I get to the top and I need to calm my mind down enough to be more present, or if I'm in an MRI machine where it's like loud and claustrophobic, that's the song I sing, and it just calms my system down. And I've been doing that my whole life since I was a little girl.
So cool. So you know the power of that.
Yeah.
And now imagine how cool it would be if you could sit down yourself and apply that music yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not doing anything. The amazing thing to me in the people that I work with is I'm not teaching anybody to play the piano.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just teaching them how to make sounds with this instrument that reflect the something of what it is that they're wanting to hear.
Yeah.
And it's really not that hard. It doesn't
That's
take,
really great.
and you know, it doesn't take theory. It doesn't take any not real knowledge. It just takes, you know, an interest in connecting with yourself and then reflecting that energetically.
So
So
is there something a person can, I don't know, maybe it's an app on their phone. Like if I'm out and about, I'd love to be able to like have a little keyboard suddenly appear and I could do that. Like, what's the way? I mean, I know I can hear it in my head,
and you
but is
can
there
sing,
a way even
you can
that
sing. It's sing.
sing?
You always got it right there with you.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only real trick there is it might be a little embarrassing or, you
I
know,
don't know. I think all of life should be like a musical where people just start singing.
walking down the sidewalk,
That would be fun.
right? Have you seen the stories about the people in Italy that are like literally opening up their windows and
Yes.
singing? And
It's so beautiful.
yeah, yeah. And somebody mentioned today they want to stop using this term social distancing and start using physical distancing because we don't need to
Mm. You
distance
don't have to
ourselves
be, yeah.
socially, right?
Oh, that's so true. Oh
Yeah,
my, physical distancing, social connection.
yeah.
How do you connect when you're physically distanced? And that's that brain's distancing thing. Like there's a fearful thing, we got to distance, but we don't have to disconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I would have never been able to have this conversation with you if we didn't
Right,
have
right.
technology. So
Yeah,
enjoy that.
yeah, it's profound.
Maureen, this has been so delightful. I don't know how long we've been going. I've lost track. Maybe I think we went over the 45 minutes, didn't we? Uh, but it's always a delight to engage these really potentially transformative ideas that I'm thrilled that there's a bunch of people that will be watching this that can learn from what you're sharing and can connect with you more if they want to find out more. So how can they do that if they'd like to find out more about what you do and connect with you?
Well, they can go to collaborative awareness, the words collaborative-awareness.com. And collaborative awareness is a term we created. It's called the Center for Collaborative Awareness, where we work. And it's really about how do we become aware and design who we are together. So it's about what is that sound when we all come together? What is that energy? Like, how can we do that from our connected brain? So there's all kinds of tools and ideas and processes to help you shift from file 1 to file 2, to rewire the files in the filing system of the mind, and to design how you're going to be together. You mentioned earlier on the blueprint of we, which is a collaboration process. It's really a design document for relationships. We design smartphones and we design furniture and cars, but we don't design our relationships. And to be in that space where there's very easy give and take and we build trust, it comes from clarity. And so it's a really, you can create templates. There's templates where every kind of relationship you can imagine, any number of people, but it's just a place where you get clarity about who are we together? Who do we want to be together? What are we creating? What are we going to design? Let's just get clarity on that. And then it makes things so much more effortless. Like the dance is easier and more fun. And you can change the music up as much as you want.
Nice. And there's a link below to an ebook that you are offering folks about the neuroscience of collaboration. And so would you like to give people a couple of sentences about what that's
There
about?
really is some amazing new research and ideas around how our brain works in collaborative spaces. So the neuroscience of collaboration is really helping you to understand what is happening in your brain when you show up in a group that might be different when you're on your own, and how do we become more collaboratively aware because we're in those spaces. Like we go beyond self-awareness and we start being in those spaces because our brain is healthier, because we are connecting more instead of protecting. So yeah, it's a nice little sort of visual and written document to take you through the neuroscience of collaboration.
Cool. Thank you so much, Maureen. This has been such a delight, and I know that this has been an amazing experience for a lot of people. So I'm so grateful for you in so many ways.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Look forward to connecting again soon.
Absolutely.
Take care.